what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, December 11th, 2019 here. Hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday and whatever the weekend is going to bring us, which supposedly was going to be some snow and slush, but I don't see it out there. In fact, it's actually quite a lovely day, except for being very, very cold. And the birds are out there enjoying all the bird seeds. So, they're happy. And so let's just get right on into it. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to basically answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. Now, in a few hours, if they haven't already, the House of Representatives will vote on the conference report for the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. And a lot of people are very, very concerned about it. It is, as has been the case in the past, a disaster for liberty. And at a time when the federal deficit is rapidly approaching $1 trillion, that's a lot of money. I can't even imagine what I would do with $1 trillion. But I'll come up with something. But they're approaching $1 trillion, and the NDAA makes no attempt whatsoever to cut the bloated military budget. Instead, it authorizes spending over $700 billion with a B on unnecessary and unconstitutional military interventions around the world. That's where all the money's going. That's why there's no money left here for us to go to the stores with, do our Christmas shopping with. It's all being plundered and looted to go off and fight these wars. Okay, let's see. Let's do that. All right, now, the 2020 NDAA fails to do anything to stop the indefinite detention and torture of American citizens without any semblance of due process. The attitude of the U.S. government is, we don't like you, we're going to lock you up. We're going to torture you. We're going to lock you in a room and force you to work, to watch old Pauly Shore movies, until you just go absolutely crazy. And Congress is trying to increase the defense budget even on the heels of an explosive expose published this week by the Washington Post about the waste in the Afghanistan war and how U.S. officials at all levels routinely lied to the media and the American people about the progress of Afghanistan, even when they knew the war was unwinnable. And of course, that is a replay of the original Pentagon Papers scandal. And there's a wonderful movie came out, I think it was about a year ago, and it was Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep and a bunch of other really fine talents. It was called simply The Post. And it told the story of what the Washington Post did when they got wind of this story and how they got hold of copies of the files and everything. If you have not seen that movie, you should, because it's a reminder of what the Washington Post used to be like and apparently wants to become again. Because they ran this story this last week, and again, it's a replay of the Pentagon Papers here. All right, it's been estimated that over $2 trillion has been spent in Afghanistan since 2001. I guess all those jihadis now have their own yachts. Approximately 2,400 American troops have lost their lives. And if you are a family member of one of those troops, you're welcome to call on in, 800-313-9443, and tell us how you feel about this revelation that the Pentagon knew they couldn't win in Afghanistan, but they kept on going anyway because nobody wanted to stand up there and say, you know, I think it's time for us to quit. It's all about ego and vanity here. So Congress wants to give out even more money for forays around the world that have got nothing to do with the defense of our country. This year's NDAA also contains a new threat that would make it impossible for us to learn the truths the government wants to keep secret. So you might want to call your U.S. representative at area code 202-224-3121 and tell them to oppose the 2020 NDAA conference report. Okay. Alrighty. Let me do a response here. We're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And of course, there has never been one of these NDAA bills that represented a blessing for the American people. It's just absolutely, it's more war. It's more loss of our freedoms and our rights. It's an ugly, ugly, ugly mess. Okay, now Time magazine announced earlier today that they're naming Greta Thunberg this year's Person of the Year. Now there was a moment of confusion because Time said they wanted to nominate the whistleblower, the one who basically launched this whole impeachment charade against President Trump, but then somebody reminded them that you can't put the photo on the cover. This person is anonymous. So Time magazine said, all right, well, we'll drop the whistleblower and we'll go with Greta Thunberg because, you know, we should have children calling the shots for the adults here on planet Earth, especially when it comes to the climate here. All right, former federal prosecutor Robert Ray is out there saying what we've been saying all along. Neither one of the charges being brought forward by the House of Representatives, whether it's abuse of power or obstruction of Congress, none of them are high crimes and misdemeanors. They are not impeachable offenses. It's just a Hail Mary pass trying to get it in there. Now, Inspector Horowitz is admitting that the warrant to spy on the Trump campaign was based entirely on the information from the debunked Steele dossier. And you're not going to see that in the corporate media. And now we're finding out, apparently, the golden showers aspect of this dossier, they were just sitting around a bar, you know, getting drunk on beer and said, I know, we'll have Trump and two prostitutes do this. That was where that all came from. Now, Hillary Clinton is out there attacking President Trump after the Dems announced articles of impeachment, calls him the occupant of the Oval Office. So tell me that she's not planning on stepping in if Trump is in fact removed from power. All right. Now, the FISA report reveals that it was Hillary Clinton who meddled in the 2016 election, and it goes all the way back to that Christopher Steele dossier, you know, the P dossier or the golden shower dossier, whatever you want to call it. That's basically it. And basically contained within Monday's FISA report by the Department of Justice Inspector General is the revelation that Fusion GPS, the firm paid by the Clinton campaign to produce that Steele dossier, was paying Steele to discuss his reporting with the media. That definitely is meddling in the election. It's definitely trying to put falsehoods out there to damage a political rival. So it's very serious stuff. And yeah, Hillary's going to run. At this point, it's pretty obvious she's going to run here. And some of the excuses that they're coming up with to proceed with impeachment are just a little bit out there in the twilight zone. Representative Al Green, Democrat of Texas, is basically out there saying that they should impeach Trump to heal the wounds of slavery. That's Representative Green's idea that, somehow or other, and we don't exactly know how, but Donald Trump is linked with slavery. And he's part of the reminder of the wounds of slavery. And so if we impeach him, that's going to make the black people all very, very happy indeed. I don't think so. By the way, Barack Obama committed 5 acts of obstruction of justice the Democrats didn't notice. No impeachment trial, no censure, no slap on the wrist, nothing. Apparently, Obama obstructed dozens of Inspector General investigations. And we're not talking about a few, we're talking dozens. Then there was that whole Iran ransom payments investigation. That one got blocked by the Obama White House. Not allowing Ben Rhodes to testify on the Iran nuclear deal. That was an obstruction charge right there. And of course, not providing the subpoenaed Solyndra documents. Remember, Solyndra was an absolute epic fail. Spent a huge amount of money on what was supposed to be this amazing solar panel system, which turned out really kind of not to work. Ultimately, they went bankrupt. Republicans launched an investigation and issued subpoenas. And the Obama White House would have none of it and claimed that complying with the subpoenas would put an unreasonable burden on the president's ability to meet his constitutional duties. Well, you're certainly not hearing that from the Democrats today, are you? And then finally, there was obstructing the NBPP voter intimidation investigation. So that's 5 cases of obstruction of justice. And the Democrats, no biggie. Remember, yesterday we were reporting on this story where Nancy Pelosi knew that George W. Bush was lying, that's lying with a capital L, regarding Saddam's weapons of mass destruction, his nuclear bombs. But Pelosi didn't consider that impeachable. We lie to the American people all the time. It's no big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal. I will not be lied to. You should have the same zero tolerance attitude. That I will have a truthful government or I'll have no government at all. I'm not going to sit around here and be lied to for the rest of my life. Ridiculous here. Okay, over in the world of corporate media, CNN, MSNBC refused to air the Department of Justice Inspector General hearing live. Basically are saying, the American people don't really need to see this. We'll put something up there with the Kardashians or something here. Anyway, the crooked Democrats are introducing their articles of impeachment. They're doing the final markup tonight as we speak. They're breaking the rules by refusing to allow the GOP their day of witnesses. In other words, they want to go right to the Senate trial, and they don't want to allow the Republicans to have anything to say. Same thing that Adam Schiff did in the House. We'll tell you what to think. You're not allowed to respond. Now, Lindsey Graham is doubling down on this and saying he will call no witnesses to the Senate hearings. He's basically giving the Democrats, the deep state, a complete pass. And what they're doing is the Senate Republicans, not the Democrats, but the Republicans, they're letting Biden off the hook. Their excuse is Senate Republicans have no appetite for there to be any kind of hearings. So we're just going to have this expedited impeachment trial. And at this point, I'm starting to think, yeah, they're really going to throw Trump out of office. And then Hillary's going to step on in. And boy, are we going to be in a world of hurt at that particular point. Now, there are some voices on the other side. Senator Ted Cruz is out there insisting the Senate will hold a fair impeachment trial to expose the Ukrainian scandal, and says Trump should be allowed to call any witnesses he wants. And Cruz is absolutely correct about that. That's what due process is all about. You're allowed to face your accuser. You're allowed to cross-examine. And I'm absolutely stunned. I'm shocked. There are so many Republicans in the Senate who seem ready to just sort of like coast along with this. Boy, they must have some really good blackmail information on those bozos. Former FBI special agent and lawyer and CNN analyst Asha Rangappa has now started deleting all of the tweets that she put up, claiming that the Steele dossier was verified and reliable. No, you can trust it. You know, Trump really did this with these prostitutes. No, he didn't. There's zero evidence to support it. It's just the corporate media doing what the corporate media does. They lie to you. And what it does is it illustrates the Democrats are still living in fantasy land. They're still obsessed with the phony Russian narrative. And they're hoping that they can hard sell it to you so that you won't get too upset when the president that you voted for, that you put into the Oval Office, gets kicked out by the political machine. Another article here, this is from PJ Media, talking about all the reporters who lied about the Steele dossier, Carter Page, and the FISA warrants, basically going from the Steele dossier is fully reliable to the Steele dossier really didn't form any basis for the FISA warrants against Carter Page, even though Horowitz has now admitted that was the case. That's what the corporate media does. They're there to sell you on this idea. All right, former federal prosecutor Robert Ray is saying, well, we already talked about that one. And let's see, the full House vote is expected next week. The Dems claim they don't plan to whip impeachment votes, as a group of vulnerable Dems are spooked and are floating the idea of censure instead. Well, you know, Hillary is definitely not going to want to go along with that idea. She wants Trump out of there. She wants Trump broken. You know, she wants a clear skid strip, if you will, so that she can step on into the Democratic primaries and stand a moderately decent chance of cheating her way into the White House, which is what she did in 2016. And I'm not expecting her to develop a conscience and a moral responsibility. I'm expecting her to cheat again, mostly with those millions of illegal immigrants who have been registered to vote, even though they're not supposed to vote. And we know we had something like 3 to 4 million illegal immigrants voting in 2016. It was worse in 2018, and it's going to be a lot worse next year, because they're looking at something like, according to Harvard and Yale, 27 million illegal immigrants in this country. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, yesterday we were talking about the fact that the Inspector General's report regarding the Carter Page visa application included 17 significant inaccuracies and omissions. And every single one of these flaws and omissions went against Donald Trump. Horowitz said there was no bias. Well, obviously, if there was no bias, then the errors and omissions should have been balanced on both sides of the line. Some would have helped Donald Trump, some would have harmed him. But for every single one of these 17 omissions and errors to go against Donald Trump, to me, that right there signals that there's a bias. And let us not forget the text messages being sent back and forth from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, in which they openly talked about making sure that Trump never got to be president. I mean, I'm sorry, to me, that sounds like there is a bias there. Now, here's where it gets really kind of weird here. A former FBI top lawyer looking at this IG report and the 17 significant errors is out there saying, well, you know, the president should apologize to us. You know, we at the FBI, we didn't do anything wrong. You know, and Trump has tried to make a big deal over these 17 significant errors. And, you know, we're not feeling that he's treating us fairly. So he should apologize to us. That'll be the day. That'll be the day. Something else that came out of the Department of Justice report. All the witnesses testified that no one, not a single person in the administration, ever insinuated, ordered, or asked staff or ambassadors to trade foreign aid for personal favor. That's why the Democrats are in a panic. They don't have anything. All right, we're going to grab a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Only I'm allowed to trade foreign money and this or that. Not you, you know. Like they're all scammers, man. You know, like you look at the same people telling Trump, and I'm not a fan of Trump, even though I voted for him, but the same people who say don't do it are the ones doing it. You know, that's how corrupt the system is. You know, do as I say, not as I do, right?
Well, you've got Biden. I mean, you know, they've pretty much nailed Biden for getting that Ukrainian prosecutor fired by holding up something like $1 billion. Now, I fail to see that there's any difference between what Biden did and what they're accusing Trump of doing.
Was his son kind of like a viceroy put in there, getting $50,000 a month on that? What is Burisma Energy? Is that an energy trading company, like a front?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Right?
And Hunter, I don't know about viceroy. I mean, viceroys historically have had plenipotentiary authority, but there's no question he's a nepot. And
he was on 3 other boards, Mike.
Yeah.
Of different companies, which it's kind of like putting pieces on a chessboard, right? That you control.
Yes.
In a way. No. How sad are these people? And he's only one son of one person. Imagine how many other people who are linked to other families. That's why we have an oligarchy. We don't have a constitutional republic anymore. It's been gone for a long time. There's no America no more. It's United States of Empire. It's oligarchy. This is what an oligarchy looks like, right? I mean,
yes.
This is it. You know, and
I'm sure Hunter is quite happy with all the money that he's made and, you know, goes to sleep at night, you know, just saying, you know, I'm fabulously wealthy and nobody can do a thing about it.
I want people to think about that. $50,000 a month for not knowing anything about energy, sits on one board out of 4 that he's on, $50,000 a month. How many of the listeners calling in make that in a year? Think about it. That's from one, and that's what the money we know that he's getting from that 1 out of 4 being on the board. There's other money coming in. His family's got a lot of money coming in. So, I mean, there's money there, but it's just not for the regular little people. It's for,
well,
it's for the elite,
right now Hunter is trying to hide a lot of that money because he's got that former stripper who, excuse me, he's got that former stripper who bore his child, and she wants child support.
They can hide it, Mike, if it's not digitally, like if it's in other artwork and.
Well, apparently Burisma is being forthcoming with how much money that Hunter was making. Anyway, listen, Dustin, going to put you on hold here and bring you back after these words from our sponsors. So we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey, and we're basically talking about, well, a lot of things. Great Britain, Saudi Arabia, and it's just a very confusing, chaotic world right now.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to switch to right before I say, again, the elite, the oligarchy, they don't live in our world. They don't drive themselves to work. I think Hillary Clinton says she hasn't driven a car in 25 or something years. They don't wash their own clothes. They don't cook their own food. They all have maids and servants for that because they are above us. That's what they think. That's why if they ever got into our world, Mike, and had to that's why Hunter Biden is kind of like a cokehead, right? Like if they ever got into our situation where we're at, they wouldn't be able to hack it because there'd be no aids to help them, No. But Mike, moving on real quick on the UK, I don't know if you heard this. There's 2,000 food banks in the UK, but there's only 1,300 McDonald's in the UK. So there's more food banks in the UK, which is, it's funny, but it's not. It's sad. It tells you there is something going on. And then, Mike,
it's telling me that people in the United Kingdom don't have the money to go to fast food restaurants.
Exactly. But Mike, Saudi Aramco? They have the IP now, but yes. I'm looking at the numbers, and in 2019 they had $160 billion in oil revenue, and by 2020 it's projected to only be $37 billion. So that's $133 billion less they're bringing in from oil revenue. That's serious problems because, and I'm also looking at the spending is down by $20 billion and revenue dropped by $50 billion. So Saudi Arabia needed to have this IPO for Aramco because I was hearing that they're going to reduce subsidies and stuff. They're going to have a lot of problems over there because if the subsidies and stuff is keeping the majority of the people who are like basically the serfs there down, because it's a welfare state. So Saudi Arabia's got issues. Britain's got issues. We all have issues. People think it's not here. It is here. We're in a recession around the world. Everything's slowing down. There's signs going on that it's slowing down.
Yes.
Just because our stock market is looking like it is, that's the stock market. But not like if you look at numbers going on.
It's not real world. It's not real world.
Yeah.
And of course,
this is real world.
Part of the problem with Saudi Arabia is, they got caught in the crossfire of the U.S. oil price war with Russia, and it absolutely caused them a lot of damage. They had to sell government bonds for the first time, which now they're desperate to try and redeem. And apparently things are so tense in Saudi Arabia, the United States is sending troops over to Saudi Arabia to act as bodyguards for the royal family, for Crown Prince Mohammed and King Salman. And it's something like 3,000 troops, plus assorted equipment, Patriot missiles, and so forth. So they're very concerned that somebody inside Saudi Arabia is already thinking about assassinating the royals. And
Mike, before I get off the phone, they're cutting military spending by 8 to 10%, which and military spending means they're going to be not buying 8 to 10. They're going to buy 8 to 10% less from us.
Yes.
That's what it means. But Mike, have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open again. And let me just come on over here, and there we are. All right. Well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is back in the hospital. And, of course, to nobody's surprise, liberals are panicking about 2020. They're trying to figure out some way they can keep her alive until somebody other than Donald Trump is in the White House. I don't think they can do it. With all due apologies to Ginsburg, she is very, very old. She's been very, very sick. And, I don't even think a cryogenic tank is going to be of much help here. All right, Lisa Page is now suing the FBI and the Department of Justice for releasing her texts and is citing the cost of therapy and permanent loss of earning capacity as the damages. So the lawsuits are flying like crazy, and apparently Lisa Page is suing the FBI and the Department of Justice for allegedly violating the Federal Privacy Act. And I think they may have actually done that, in which case, if they did, then Lisa Page has got a great lawsuit. And, I'm sure she's got herself a really good lawyer. Anyway. So Attorney General William Barr obviously is not agreeing with Inspector General Michael Horowitz. And basically, he was being interviewed with NBC News, and he says there was no collusion. The investigation was completely baseless. Obama talked to the bad guys about election interference. And so it looks like William Barr is definitely forming his own opinion about what's going on. In fact, Barr has revealed the timeline on the Durham investigation. Then he turned around and blasted the media for their role in the Russian hysteria. Certainly, the corporate media was fanning that up just as hard as they could. Now, Bill Barr basically came on out as part of the same video saying Trump was clearly spied upon. And he says, I think wiring people to go talk to people and make recordings is in fact spying. That was one of the big points of contention, was that all the wires that people were wearing inside the Oval Office. And yeah. Okay. Now, Doug Collins gets the Democratic Council to admit that Joe Biden actually carried out a quid pro quo with the Ukrainian government. And apparently this was a major admission from Democratic Counsel Daniel Goldman this afternoon at the House Judiciary Committee's impeachment hearing. And in the clip, Collins runs through former Vice President Joe Biden's now infamous boast about threatening to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid to Ukraine if the president refused to fire the prosecutor general who was investigating natural gas company Burisma Holdings. So, yeah, there's your quid pro quo. Wasn't Trump, it was Biden. All right. Major Garrett is out there saying that, Donald Trump's rhetoric may be slightly off, but he hasn't tried to jail any journalists. And Obama did that twice. have all of that going on here. Okay, so Hunter Biden's baby mama wants to know how much he made at the Ukrainian energy firm. And so the sex stripper suing Hunter Biden for child support wants him to reveal how much he made while he served on the board of the Ukrainian natural gas company Burisma. This was filed in court documents. Now, Hunter has already filed a request with the court to have all of his financial records sealed, claiming that he's absolutely broke and he's poor and it's nobody's business but his own. But the amount that London Alexis Roberts is asking Biden to acknowledge he reaped at the energy firm is redacted in the 47-point request for admissions her lawyer filed in an Arkansas court. But reports have said Biden was paid as much as $50,000 per month in the position he sat on the company's board of directors between April 2014 and April 2019. So he's got lots of cash, and I think this stripper definitely, she deserves her day in court. She's got a baby. It's Hunter's baby, and I'm sorry. I think Hunter, needs to be reminded that when you father a child, you have certain responsibilities and obligations that you're going to have to basically step up to the plate on. Okay, Steve Elkins is sending me a bunch of mails, and apparently at Trump's press conference right now, Trump literally came on out saying that the Jewish faith is as much a part of his family as anything else. So that's absolute pandering here. And, pushing this anti-Semitism legislation. Trump is just giving Israel absolutely everything that they want. Okay, Virginia Roberts, who's the young girl at the center of the Jeff Epstein, Prince Andrew case, is out there saying, I'm not suicidal. If something happens to me, do not let this go. Evil people want me quiet, in the wake of Prince Andrew's scandal and Jeffrey Epstein's death. And that sounds very, very familiar because we went through the same thing with Deborah Jean Palfrey, where she came on my show and said, I'm not suicidal. If something happens to me, it's not suicide. And then she was found hanging in her garage with a huge contusion to the back of her head, which makes it look like somebody clubbed her into unconsciousness and then strung her up on the rope here. Now, Bill Cosby has lost his appeal of his sexual assault conviction. And I think he kind of hoisted with his own petard on this one, because over the last few days, he's been out there making the statements about how he feels no remorse, and he's not going to evidence any remorse going through the parole board. Well, he lost the appeal, and so he's the first celebrity trial of the #MeToo era. And, it's so odd, because I remember as a kid, playing his records to Russell, my brother, whom I slept with, the story of Fat Albert and all this stuff. And then he's just become this very mean and bitter individual, where he refuses to acknowledge that he might have actually behaved badly in the presence of these young ladies. So I'm not surprised that he lost the appeal, and frankly, he did it to himself. All righty, let's talk about the international news here, because there's a bunch of stuff going on here. Let's start out with Syria. And apparently Turkish proxies are seeking to capture chunks of the M4 highway. And this is an escalation of the military confrontation in Latakia and the surrounding area. According to pro-government sources, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and allied militant groups conducted attacks and shelled several positions of the Syrian army near the M4 highway and south of the town of Kabari. And in response, Syrian Air Force and artillery units conducted strikes on militants' positions near Jisr al-Shangur al-Janudaya and at a contact line near the M4 highway and Kobani. Now, pro-Turkish sources reported that units affiliated with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces shelled positions of the Turkish-backed militant groups. Everybody's fighting everybody over there. And apparently, Russian warplanes have now intercepted Israeli jets over southern Syria. And Israel's not supposed to be there, but apparently Russia sent in a Sukhoi Su-24 bomber and basically just intercepted the Israeli warplanes and drove them back. All right, apparently the white helmets are boosting their presence in Idlib. And according to the Russian special envoy, it looks like they're getting ready for some kind of a provocation. To, let's get this war going again here where everybody's wasting their time here. And Lavrentiev added that Moscow is calling on all of its partners to carefully assess the information about the potential provocation. Now, here's where things are getting really interesting. Turkey may close the Incirlik air base for the United States if Washington, D.C. decides to impose sanctions on Ankara for their purchase of the Russian S-400 missile defense system. Now, this is going to be a little bit tricky because at Incirlik, the United States keeps nuclear weapons. So this is going to be a little bit of a tense situation. I mentioned this earlier in the program, but according to this story that is coming out of Checkpoint Asia, American soldiers are now acting as bodyguards for the Saudi royals. And I can imagine that the families of these kids are probably wondering, what on earth are they doing over there? But as of the end of November, U.S. military leaders were in Riyadh negotiating the employment terms for the royals' new bodyguards. And that is the plan for an expanded American military presence in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, including Patriot missiles, Sentinel radars, a THAAD air defense system, fighter aircraft, and other equipment. 3,000 personnel on the ground there. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones to Paul in New Jersey. Aloha, Paul. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Yeah. Michael, you remember about 2 weeks ago, it was on December 3rd, when Donald Trump was meeting with French President Macron.
Yes.
He said that the U.S., and this is the quote, has a tremendous amount of captured ISIS fighters over in Syria, and they're all under lock and key, unquote.
Okay.
So first of all, I find that as a very menacing kind of thing to say to the president of France. It's really kind of, scary in a sense.
Yes.
And then the question is, he's almost bragging about it as though it's funny or it's cute. And my question goes out, what is he doing with these ISIS fighters? What's his plans? I mean, is the United States, and I remember from about a month ago, they said it was as many as 11,000 fighters that were under the control of the Kurds. So is he admitting that we took all those fighters and we have all 11,000? Or did we hand some of those over to the Turks when we prematurely pulled out of the Kurdish areas? And so now those ISIS fighters have joined and are working as Kurdish mercenaries now in Syria.
That's one possible explanation. The other one is that we seem to be ramping up to war with Iran, and a fighting force of 11,000 strikes me as something you want to have available to you.
And they would be foot soldiers on the ground.
Yes.
And they would be willing to strap, and use suicide weapons and those truck bombs.
I don't know that they're willing to go the suicide bomb route. I think that's more a PR stunt than it is a real military tactic. But certainly these ISIS fighters are familiar with fully automatic weapons and how to basically mount machine guns on trucks. And I think that Trump is taking this sort of braggadocio approach to them because he sees them as part of his armed force he's going to bring against Iran.
Well, to me, I consider his comments to Macron as a declaration of being basically in deep with the deep state, because that's a pretty horrible thing to say. I mean, what he should be doing, if he really cared about justice, is he should be working with Assad to have those ISIS fighters tried, and in my opinion, ideally executed by the Syrian government in Syria and leave it up to them. Many of those fighters are foreigners. And to me, there's nothing lower than having foreigners come into your country and join either side in a civil conflict without approval from the legitimate government.
Well, that's exactly what the United States has been doing in Syria. Anyway, Paul, we got to let you go here. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And it does seem like everybody is ramping up to just have a war. Let's just get it on and get it over with. And right now, according to this article that came out of Checkpoint Asia, the U.S. Army is preparing their largest exercise in Europe against Russia in 25 years. This exercise will involve 29,000 American, 8,000 other NATO troops to take part in what is called a force projection event stretching over 10 countries. So it looks like they're getting really, really serious about taking on Russia. Big mistake, in my opinion, but then they don't listen to me about this. Over in Oklahoma, there's a bill that's been pre-filed with the Oklahoma Senate, which would prohibit unconstitutional foreign deployments of the state's National Guard troops. And passage into law would effectively restore the founders' framework for a state-federal balance regarding the state militia. Now, the way it was originally set up to work is the National Guard represents the militia of the state government. Fortunately, starting with, I think it was the Rodney King riot, the National Guard was federalized. And ever since then, the National Guard keeps getting sent to Afghanistan and Kuwait and Yemen and all the rest of it. But Oklahoma is now saying if there isn't a congressional declaration of war, then the Oklahoma National Guard units don't go anywhere. So good for the Oklahomans here. Over in Iraq, a drone has reportedly targeted the home of Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr in the southern Iraq city of Najaf. And in a statement, Salah Muhammad al-Iraqi, who's close to the Shia cleric, said the attack came in response to orders issued by al-Sadr to protect protesters in Baghdad. Remember, they got hit with a couple of rockets there the other day. So no injuries were reported in the drone attack, according to local police, who spoke on condition of anonymity. There is no claim of responsibility for the attack. I don't think it's going to take too many tries for us to guess who was behind this here. But Saraya al-Salam, the peace brigades of the Sadrist movement, went to Tahrir Square in central Baghdad on Friday in order to protect the protesters after an attack by gunmen left 18 demonstrators dead. It's getting ugly. Okay, the United States is no longer considering Yemen's Houthis to be an Iranian proxy. And this is probably going to surprise a lot of people. But, you know, this idea of the Houthis as Iranian proxy was being pushed by Saudi Arabia to justify the Yemen war. Now they're backing off and they're starting to talk peace. And the U.S. can't possibly support a peace deal that involves an actual Iranian-linked faction. So that's why. Okay, the gridlock in Paris. Get this. 285 miles of traffic jams form in the city on the 7th day of the crippling strikes, hours before the French Prime Minister unveils the hated pension reforms. So the yellow vests are definitely going to still be out there. And I hope they don't send the army after them, but at this point, who knows what's going to happen? It's just getting just crazy out there. Okay. All right. Over in Israel, there is, to nobody's surprise, a growing opposition over plans for a new Israeli illegal settlement in the West Bank city of Hebron. Now, Hebron used to be this giant open-air market, and a lot of the Palestinians did a lot of business there, and all of a sudden Israel comes on in and says, well, we're going to knock it down. We're going to build a building for the settlers. And so the Palestinian protesters have clashed with Israeli forces over these plans for this new Israeli settlement in Hebron. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network and getting on back here. This next story, I don't know about you. I'm getting really kind of sick and tired of Trump just giving things away to Israel. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He has acknowledged Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, even though the United Nations is telling them to get on out there. Then you have this statement that the settlements in the occupied territories aren't really a violation of international law. And here's the latest one. President Trump will sign an executive order, or he signed it today, to interpret Judaism as a nationality and not just a religion. A move that the Trump administration believes will fight what they perceive as anti-Semitism on college campuses. Well, I don't know. I'm a Jedi Knight. So can I claim Tatooine citizenship? So, yeah, I'm very disappointed in Donald Trump. Doesn't mean I want him impeached. But a wedgie, maybe? I don't know. But it's just like, he's giving Israel everything that they want. And we can't afford that much longer. We really can't. Okay, story coming out of the original antiwar.com. Money, power, and turf winning the Middle East media war at any cost. and it's talking about of the 180 countries classified by Reporters Without Borders annual report on press freedom, 7 Middle Eastern countries are listed at the bottom 10% category of the world's worst violators. And of course, leading off the bottom there is Israel, which likes to claim that it's the only democracy in the Middle East. They basically ranked 88th. Hardly shocking realization considering its constant targeting, killing, wounding, and arresting of Palestinian journalists. Palestinian Authority achieved an even worse rank at 137th place. It is telling that not a single Middle Eastern country has made it to the top 30% rank. In countries like Egypt, Libya, Syria, and Yemen, where independent monitoring of government behavior is almost entirely absent, hundreds of journalists simply disappear in the black hole of brutal prison systems, malnourished, medically neglected, and routinely tortured. And I think we're going to see that in this country. I really, really do. All righty, let's talk about the economic news here. Apparently, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia physically threatened investors for the Aramco IPO to reach the $2 trillion target. And that's a credible threat. Don't forget, when he first got named as heir to the Saudi throne, he grabbed a whole bunch of his family, locked him up in a hotel, and said, you don't get out until you turn over a bunch of your money. So, yeah. And then we have this other story. Another one bites the dust. We talked about yesterday one of the major U.S. trucking companies going into bankruptcy, and it happened so suddenly their drivers are literally stranded out on the road. They don't have gas money. They don't have cash. They don't know how to get home. Well, there's been another one. New England Motor Freight Incorporated announced the company and 10 related entities have voluntarily filed for relief under Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the District of New Jersey in Newark. Okay? And another one bites the dust. Out in California, Series, a California-based trucking company, Mike Tamana Freight Lines filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the Eastern District of California in Modesto, according to court documents. Now, we have a lot of people out there who are saying that the decline in brick and mortar retail is from people who are ordering online and just having the stuff shipped to their home. And I can kind of understand that living where I live right now, because you have to drive huge distances to get to a Walmart or an Office Depot. And so as a result, I kind of don't have any choice other than to do online purchasing. But I think a lot of people can't do the online purchasing. They have run out of money. And that's why all these trucking companies are in serious, serious trouble right now. All right, there's been a new Bank of International Settlements report on the Fed's repo market interventions, and they're saying at some point it's going to be hitting $500 billion with a B every day, $500 billion. Right now, bank bailouts have hit $362 billion. That's the second highest out there. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Mike in Kentucky, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I was thinking about a few years back, FCC did a raid on a alleged, pirate radio station. I think it was out in San Diego or something. And people need to support their local media. If they got a radio station in their community that's carrying your show and Republic Broadcasting, they need to be, I think, on the ready to go down and get in the way of any kind of, quote, enforcement action as the telephony industry has totally hijacked the FCC. You're talking about journalists in other countries being disappeared and locked away in the prison system. Something like that could very well happen to me. Justice Department, I think the FCC sent over the fine for them to deal with, and of course, several years back, I think 2014 or something, Congress kind of dressed them down for issuing these ridiculous amounts of fines to some of these telephone companies as showboating in order to try to make the news or whatever. And there's probably I forget. There's a story about however many millions and millions of dollars they've never collected in fines that they've issued. So. I'm not exactly awake at night worrying about it, but we're finding the maximum amount they could. And previous guy, a phone lobbyist, Tom Wheeler, who's basically said, don't get in the way of technology. He fined us $144,344 and no pennies, but. Yeah, so, I don't know what they plan on doing about that, because nobody that runs this media outlet is basically, Kentucky doesn't have, like other states, never did have any kind of actual public access channels that were mandated by law. So low-power TVs often serve that function. And in a lot of places, it's basically a political good old boy agreement, to get on a cable system. But there was...
there's two ways to go. There's two ways. Yeah, there's two ways to go. I mean, one, there's what's called community access TV, which by law, all cable companies are required to provide that. And then, of course,
certain large markets in some states.
I'm sorry?
Not everywhere. Only in certain larger markets and in some states do they require that. But in Kentucky, it's never been a mandate. Pennsylvania did that. And some other states did that, but no, Texas has it. I mean, that's how Alex Jones built himself up, with a cable access show. But it depends on how much the population is, how big the system is, and stuff like that in some states. But
then Plan B would be the Part 15 radio transmitters, of which there are a sizable number across the country. And that's people who are running these low-powered transmitters where they're not required to have a license or call letters.
They're limited. They're very, very limited. Very limited.
They carry our show a lot.
Yes, but they're very, very limited. I think the AMs and I forget the names of them. There's some actual, radios in a box you can buy. Municipalities use them for tourism and stuff. They're limited to very low milliwatts, and maybe they go, 300 to 500 feet legally with the right antenna. Now, people will modify them, and they'll get them to go out 1 or 2 miles.
Yes.
But the AM band, they were talking about shutting down all analog AM, and people raised a ruckus, and they've temporarily suspended that. So everything that's left on AM is going to eventually be digital. And I don't know I don't know about you, but I've never had a car that even has a digital AM radio. So, and it's very sketchy. It locks up a lot. Drop signal. Just like digital television. I think it was set up to fail.
I was living in Hawaii when they went from analog to digital over-the-air TV broadcasting, and it was an absolute epic disaster because I had this little tiny TV. Still had this little tiny TV set that I used to use to patch into the video feed on the cameras on the soundstage of Lost, so I could see what they were doing there. And just as an experiment, I walked outside and tried to tune in some of these local TV stations, which we used to get on analog all the time without any problem. And they were just all junked up, and it basically, it was a real mess. I think it was a way of just scooting everybody over into cable service, for that money.
It was the way that they lost from 30% down to less than 10% of the television audience at one point was watching on antenna. And the mastering the human domain concept is part of the motivator for that, I believe, because if you're watching on an antenna out in your hunting cabin or in your garage or, workshop, they don't know what the input into your brain is, So that's the thing. They want to track all inputs and outputs of all human brains so they can determine what their little social engineering tweaking and marketing is doing. They want to track your resultant output based on the influencers that you have, and they want to of course, get rid of any disrupting influencers that point this out. And so a lot of independent, true
I know that around
independent
here,
press is gone.
We have cable TV where we are, and in fact, I just got my office cable TV set up running just today here. But just looking around the neighborhood, there are a lot of analog antennas out there. So there's a lot of people that
still work. That's another scam, is that you don't have to have a digital antenna. The analog antennas work for digital TV, but you do have to get them up high enough to where somebody parks the car 2 feet one day, different spot, the reflected signal doesn't lock up your TV. Electric toy trains locks up your TV tree. The blender, the cake mixer, any electrical interference like that, it just locks it up. And 5G is going to take part of the C-band satellite. So a lot of radio and TV stations are going to have to spend, $800 per channel to put filters in, because they're taking, I think, 200 megahertz out of the downlink frequencies for the C-band. I mean, it's crazy. Anyway,
Okay, well, Mike, we're going to have to let you go. Yeah, we're going to have to let you go.
Sure.
Take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. I'm sorry my hand slipped on the button here. Interestingly enough, C.J. Pearson is now challenging Greta Thunberg to a climate debate following her naming as Times Person of the Year. And she's probably going to wish that did not happen, because remember, she wasn't going to be the original Time Person of the Year. It was going to be the whistleblower, but they decided they couldn't do that. All right, getting on back to the economic news here. Trump shuts down the World Trade Organization Appeals Court, sending the European Union and China scrambling for a plan B. And internationalists have always dreamed of a court with jurisdiction over all the countries of the world. And in 1995, the World Trade Organization was created, allowing the world's countries to press claims against one another for the first time. But it's not going to survive the Trump presidency, as yesterday his administration has effectively brought it to an end, neutering its ability to intervene in trade wars, having blocked all new appointments to its dispute resolution court. Now, I'm having a hard time understanding what it is that Donald Trump thinks he's accomplishing with this. Basically, I on reflection, he wants to be able to declare tariffs and sanctions against everybody on planet Earth, and nobody can stand up to him. That's the only thing that really makes a lot of sense. All right, there have been two recent developments highlighting how the new world is being reinvented by the Chinese and how it will affect the Middle East and Central Asia. Last month, while our members of Congress just busied themselves with impeachment stuff, a mammoth Chinese cargo train arrived in Turkey en route to the heart of Europe. It will be remembered as the first freight train to pass from China across Central Asia and under the Bosphorus Strait using the Marmaray tunnel as part of China's historic Belt and Road Initiative. So, now, like the Suez Canal of its day, this Iron Silk Road through Central Asia is a time saver, with the added bonus of circumventing sea routes now controlled by the West. It will reduce the transportation time between China and Turkey from 1 month to 12 days. While the entire journey from Seon to Prague in the heart of Europe will take only 18 days, half the time of a similar journey by sea and at similar cost. If we go to war with China, you can count the bombers are going to blow up that Belt and Road. Because the U.S. can't compete with that. They absolutely cannot compete with that. All right, Goldman Sachs is out there basically alerting us all to the fact that central banks worldwide are buying up massive amounts of gold in a shift away from the U.S. dollar. And they are very wise to do that. Gold prices are expected to climb to $1,600 per ounce over the next year. And it says that central banks are consuming a fifth of the global supply of gold. De-dollarization in central banks, demand from central banks for gold is biggest since the let me back up here, I got interrupted. De-dollarization in certain banks, demand from central banks for gold is biggest since the Nixon era, remember the Nixon gold shock, eating up 20% of global supply. And apparently, the head of global commodities research at Goldman, Jeff Curry, told Bloomberg, I'm going to like gold better than bonds because the bonds won't reflect that de-dollarization. So citing fear-driven demand for the precious metal, Goldman analysts said last week that investors should diversify their long-term holdings with gold. That would also apply to silver as well. All righty, let's see. Take a look at what got sent to me here. And India passes controversial citizenship bill that excludes Muslims. Oh, that's going to be a fun time here. Now, here is an interesting little story for you computer nerds. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And for those of you who are really fans of computers and whatnot, there's been a great deal of interest in 3D printing. And for those who just want to dabble, get their toes wet, if you will. Article out of 90milesfromtyranny.blogspot.com talking about a $100 3D printer. Now, this is not a high precision instrument. It uses various resins, and it's run off a smartphone application. But, you know, I have to admit, I'm kind of curious. You can buy one without breaking the bank, although there's already one comment at the original article page saying, I think this is a scam, so maybe you want to wait and see. But the one thing that was very obvious to me is the precision with which it's doing the 3D printing. It's not there. And they're making all these little spiral pieces and keychain ornaments and things like that. But as far as making a copy of your significant other, don't think the technology is there yet. All right, talking about immigration and mass migration and whatnot. Apparently, there was a banner hung over a bridge just outside Washington, D.C. that said mass immigration turned Virginia blue. And of course, that's exactly what was supposed to happen. They're doing exactly the same thing down in Texas. They want to turn all of these districts blue so they vote for Democrats. We saw that in 2018, where in California, which used to be, I mean, especially going back to Reagan, was hardcore conservatives. And then all of a sudden, in something like 4 or 5 of the districts, they'd basically been taken over by the illegal immigrants who, even though it's not legal for them to do so, voted Democrat. And GOP lost 4 California districts. And what I don't understand is why Donald Trump isn't addressing this problem, because it is a problem. And if he doesn't address it, it's going to wind up costing him next year. So, CBS is now demanding that YouTube censor conspiracy theories. Sounds all warm and fuzzy and we're taking care of you, but, you know, who defines them? One man's conspiracy theory is another man's truth. So why not let people decide for themselves rather than have these large corporations controlling what they're allowed to watch? We do have a First Amendment still in this country. So most of those big social media companies, they're in serious trouble as it is. People are turning to other resources, other platforms, want to get away from all of this dictatorial content. All right, jury selection has begun in the trial of Sean Urbanski, Maryland man accused of fatally stabbing Bowie State University student Richard Collins III at a bus stop on the University of Maryland campus 2 years ago. The 23-year-old Collins was a freshly commissioned U.S. Army lieutenant just days away from graduating. Now, Urbanski will be tried for first-degree murder and a state hate crime charge, which could bring him life in prison without the possibility of parole if convicted. Now, as WJZ-TV reports, the trial for the high-profile crime has already been delayed 4 times. And let's see, for some reason, even with the hall light on, see if we can get this back in focus. No, I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. I need new equipment. I need lights. I need all of that stuff. All right, let's try one more time. There we go. All right, hopefully that's not going to drift off again here. All right, a jury has acquitted the man who offered $500 to anyone who kills an ICE agent on Twitter, but questions about true threats remain. Was it a real threat, or was it, as this guy said, just, you know, his attempt at humor? All righty. Trump-hating anthem kneeler Megan Rapinoe is Sports Illustrated's Sports Person of the Year. The U.S. women's soccer final viewership was down by almost half this year thanks to the Trump-bashing, anthem-protesting U.S. national team. So they cursed the U.S. president. They disrespected their country. What did they expect? Now, Megan Rapinoe led the team in hurling insults at President Trump. The liberals and their media loved it. Americans as a whole were turned off. And, of course, I don't buy Sports Illustrated anymore, even with the swimsuit edition, and I certainly have no more intention of doing so in the future. Over in Virginia, as you're probably aware, there have been some new laws passed regarding gun control. And a sheriff in Virginia said on Facebook last week that if the Democratic-controlled legislature in his state passes any more restrictive gun control laws, he's just going to start deputizing citizens by the thousands to allow them to be exempt from the laws. If you're deputized, you know, if you're a sheriff's deputy, you're allowed to carry a gun. Somewhere around here, I have a sheriff's badge left over from a movie I worked on many years ago. All righty. There was a mass shooting that occurred in New Orleans over the last weekend, and it's largely being ignored by the corporate media because the shooting was committed by an African-American male, and that just doesn't go along, with the anti-white narrative. And so there's now video of the New Orleans shooting. No arrest announced yet. Media seems totally disinterested in a mass shooting with 11 shot. And the reason is they must not think it'll fit their preferred narrative. If it did, they'd be demanding a manhunt and covering this 24/7. All right, getting on back to Greta Thunberg. The 8th largest snowstorm to hit North America it's on us. 7 counties in New York State have been buried in snow as their regions are declared snow emergencies. Albany even had to tow some 240 cars since declaring the emergency. This has been the biggest snowstorm on record this early in the season, and it turned out to be the 8th largest snowstorm on record, period. End of discussion. St. Paul voted to increase snow emergency towing fees to $300. So if you're in that part of the country, just, park your car in your garage. Meanwhile, in Duluth, they voted to revamp broken snow emergency systems, designating specific roads to be used in the snow emergency. So that's one of the areas in which the global warming cult has been of disservice to the American people. Because they've gone into all of these city councils and said, look, you don't need to have snow plows and you don't need to stockpile road grit because, there's just not going to be a lot of snow this winter. But remember back when they said there was going to be no snow at all in Great Britain? I think that was back in 2009. And the thing that is really kind of alarming is how all of these climate change activists don't really think about what they're doing. Now, over at the Miami Art Week, there's an installation about climate change that apparently is anything but environmentally friendly. Artist Leandro Ehrlich's much buzzed about work, Order of Importance, features 66 life-size replicas of cars and trucks constructed out of what appears to be sand along the South Beach shore. Isn't very finely detailed, I might add, looking at the photo. The traffic jam replica, curated by art world insider Ximena Caminos, is a commentary on Miami's climate crisis. Here's the problem. Sources told Page 6 the artist used a spray foam insulation that contains hazardous chemicals. And a source close to the project revealed that the installation was made using Sika Postfix, which according to Home Depot's safety data sheet should be kept in suitable closed containers for disposal. They went on out there and they said, we're going to make a sculpture of 66 cars and it's going to be wonderful and it's going to be great. This whole gender neutral thing is definitely getting a little out of control. And apparently over in England, there was a mother who posted on Facebook that she'd been shamed for not using a gender neutral name for Santa Claus. And the mother claimed that she'd been attacked for using the name Father Christmas to describe the bearded character. And Plymouth Live reports the local mom says she was shamed on a group on social media for discussing a children's Christmas book and talking about Father Christmas, as Santa is now seen as gender neutral and is many parents' preferred name for the jolly character in the red suit. They're all going crazy. They're all going absolutely nutso over there. But not quite as bad as Germany. And this is going to wreck my memory of Christmas in Germany, which I had a very positive one. The majority of Germans are now in favor of ditching all Christmas lights because of climate change. And apparently they had a poll, and some 57% said they would decrease their use of Christmas lights or even abandon them entirely in the future. Boy, that would not get a lot of sympathy around here. Last Sunday, everybody had their lights on, and the Homeowners Association drove around mapping out what's going to be the parade route for all the lights and everything. I mean, we can look out the window and just see all kinds of stuff here. So they take their Christmas pretty seriously around here. All righty. Exxon has been ruled as not guilty in a fraud suit over climate change. And apparently a judge said the New York Attorney General had failed to prove that Exxon lied to investors over the real impact of climate change. Well, nobody really knows. Everybody's always guessing out there. You know, the polar bears are going to drown. No, the polar bears are doing quite well. Well, Antarctica's going to fall into the ocean. Nope, Antarctica's still there. So the judge said nothing in this opinion is intended to absolve ExxonMobil from responsibility for contributing to climate change through the emission of greenhouse gases in the production of its fossil fuel products. ExxonMobil does not dispute either that its operations produce greenhouse gases or that greenhouse gases contribute to climate change. But ExxonMobil is in the business of producing energy, and this is a securities fraud case, not a climate change case. All right, you're going to really like this one. This is coming out of Brass Check. And the headline reads, "The sickest generation of children in American history." And they're basically saying at this point, we're looking at the first generation of American children who are not expected to have a lifespan as long as their parents. Why? Well, because of mercury, aluminum, formaldehyde, and more in vaccines. And I know about the formaldehyde because Claire is very, very sensitive to that. All right, we're going to grab a phone call here. Cody in Kentucky. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good evening, Mike. Last time I called you, I was talking about the Save James younger transgender child issue in Dallas, but yeah, tonight I'm calling about an issue that affected me directly. When I was coming back from Canada, the Border Patrol demanded access to my iPhone. And, you know, wasn't carrying contraband, don't have a history of crossing the border with anything illegal. So to be treated like that, I was put off, Fourth Amendment violation. You know, had no reason to justify that. And I told them that. I said, I'm putting you on notice. You're violating the Fourth Amendment, probably some other constitutional amendments. And they didn't seem to care. They said, well, we're going to keep your phone if you don't give us the unlock code to it. I actually had two phones because I've got a software product, and I run an iPhone 6 and 8 just to make sure it doesn't run too slow on a 6. And I had an Android with me, so I don't know, maybe they thought that was weird that I was carrying separate phones, but I did have brochures from the software product, so it, you know, justifies that. But it's been 4 months now. I called the border. They stonewall me. They tell me the phones are in some kind of lab. It's kind of interesting how the government's spending money to try to crack my phones when I don't have a history of doing things illegal like that. That's, you know, treating me like a terrorist. I'm
all right, well, listen, Cody, we got to take a break for commercials. Stay on the line. Don't hang up. We'll come right back to you after these few minutes. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Cody in Kentucky. And Cody, I have a question for you. When you say Border Patrol, were they TSA or ICE?
Well, this is kind of an interesting part to the story. So they were Border Patrol agents, but I believe that they're FBI that was the people that were actually, searching my computer, because my computer wasn't password protected. And they were going to take that, but then once they were able to get into that, they wouldn't tell me. That's the interesting part. I said, so, who are these guys? Oh, we work with all government agencies is all they would say. So read between the lines, it most likely was somebody higher trained than regular Border Patrol. Somebody, yeah. And they said, well, they took my phones. There's no, the serial numbers inside the phone. It's not directly. I don't know why Apple doesn't put them directly on the phone, but, I said, well, I need, they just want to take them. They weren't even going to give me a receipt. I said, I'm due a receipt or something. They finally give me some government form. And then the interesting part is when I call the forfeiture office, they say, oh, they're not forfeited. They've been detained. You got to call the bridge. You call the bridge. They give me the runaround. 3 different numbers later, the number that's in their computer system is not even the number they gave me. There's three different numbers that I went through, and now it's 4 months later, about 5-6 weeks ago, they told me, oh, it'll be a couple more weeks. They're in a lab, and now the other day, the same story, So my question to you and all the audience is, do I blame Trump or do I blame the deep state for this treatment? They say under Trump, I donated to Trump, but under Trump, they say they've done this to 30,000 people a year. And I think under Obama, it was maybe 8,000 people a year, this abusive, tactic of, trying to steal all our digital data like that, Like who
I don't know what the actual numbers are for either Trump or Obama, but I think it's definitely an epiphenomenon of our government as a whole, that it's a systemic problem. That it's no one individual, it's no one Border Patrol agent. It's just this attitude of, we have a right to peek inside your tablet and your smartphone to make sure that you're not violating somebody's copyright or that you're not smuggling porn, because that's the new bad guy out there and the new justification for ripping into people's phones.
Now they stole my property for 4 months. You look at, if an iPhone is only good for a couple of years, or only, not good necessarily, but, is only current for a couple of years, and they've had it 4 months. What is that, 18% of, the lifespan of that device,
Yes.
It's just, that's why supposedly we had the Fourth Amendment to protect from some of this. It'd be different if I had a history of smuggling stuff across, then, yeah, obviously, but it's still not probable cause technically. And, they didn't have any probable cause. They're being a tyrant government. So my question is, who are we mad at? Trump is ultimately responsible. He should fire these people that are being abusive. And he's,
I would agree. Okay, we got to take a break here for station identification. We've got more callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. We're going to go back to the phones to Kelly in Austin. Aloha, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I heard you mention that there was a survey in Germany regarding Christmas lights. You said that the majority of Germans are in favor of not lighting up for Christmas. I recall, I think you said you lived in Munich.
I worked in Munich briefly, yes.
He's super muffled, Kelly. Can you clear that up for us a little bit?
Yeah, hold on. Let me turn off this earpiece.
Okay, not exactly sure what's going on here.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, very good. I had to turn off my Bluetooth earpiece. I lived in Berlin and I lived in Frankfurt, and I especially enjoyed the Christmas season in both cities.
Yes.
My impression is that anybody who thinks that Germans are going to turn off the lights for Christmas because of global warming is an idiot. The big Weihnachtsmarkt, in particular, in say in Frankfurt, attracts thousands and thousands and thousands of visitors from across Germany and Europe and, and from the United States. And the lights are one of the big attractions for the tourists there. So I'm not sure whom they're surveying to get these opinions, but the average German I know and I've talked with, I think would regard that as a crazy idea.
I would tend to agree with you, and I think possibly it's another PR stunt, to push this whole global warming situation. And, you can't have Christmas anymore because it's poisoning the earth, and you can't have Easter anymore, and you can't have Thanksgiving anymore, and you can't have Halloween anymore. And basically just trying to erase all of our traditions and all of our holidays so that we just, sit around in a circle on the ground and chant our allegiance to the New World Order.
I think you're right. Again, the Germans I know love Christmas, and they love the big Christmas markets, the Weihnachtsmarkts, in the different cities. And so this has got to be something that somebody cooked up in order to promote an agenda. I remember just a few years ago, I was visiting Munich, and I commented to my wife at the time because there were Muslims were pouring into Munich, and I said, I wonder how long it'll take before somebody proposes doing away with the Oktoberfest. Well, that year, some of the liberals in Munich proposed doing away with Oktoberfest because they didn't want to offend their guests. I thought, well, then don't go to Munich.
I mean, there's nothing really religious about Oktoberfest. It's just a lot of people getting together underneath a big tent and drinking up the surplus beer, because Germany has very strict laws regarding the use of preservatives and chemicals in the beer. And by the time October rolls around, they've got a surplus of beer, and they just give it away. That's what Oktoberfest is. It's a beer festival. Yeah. And
you're talking about the Reinheitsgebot laws for beer purity. They're very strict about that.
Yes.
But I brought that up to point out that people will grab on anything they can in order to ruin traditions. And with regard to Christmas in Germany is there to stay unless they just get overrun by Muslims. The Weihnachtsmarks are not going away, and the lights are such a big part of the Weihnachtsmark are there to stay as well.
Well, I certainly hope so, because I have a very pleasant memory of Christmas time in Munich, and I would hate to see that go away. But then at my age, so many things that are in my memory are now gone, like the Mississippi Queen and the World Trade Towers and a bunch of other people that I used to know and everything. So I hope you're right, because, we're not talking about a huge amount of heat generated by these lights. Anyway, Kelly, we're going to let you go and switch over to Chris in Las Vegas. Aloha, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, thank you so very, very much, Michael. Your friend Cody that had called previously titillated my interest because I think I have some higher level knowledge regarding what he encountered there from my own experiences that I've had a deep amount of investigative research into. And it strongly appears when they talk about this broad jurisdictional scope that they claim they have, this can only be the so-called Joint Terrorism Task Force Special Operations of the Sovietized, aggregated all federal, state, local, and agencies, municipal, cities, counties, and even NGOs are all see something, say something agents for the government. When they claim this broad scope of authority, that's a term I've heard, broad powers, by a zoning agent who made a malicious false police report against me and put the blame on me and tried to invoke violence from myself so they could murder me to stop my advocacy and activism for honest government.
Well, my goodness, that sounds like quite an adventure there. And Unfortunately, we're coming up on another time where, being an independent journalist, being a truth activist, does carry with it an element of risk.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's what a SLAPP suit is about, a suit against public participation. When we're a freelance reporter, an investigative researcher, a crisis analyst, and an investigator of police murders, as a former multi-jurisdictional law enforcement professional, we then fall under the scope and sphere of those who are working those capacities, who are less than honorable and have become criminals themselves, using their badge to give the illusion they are protecting us when they're really protecting their own self-interest, and retaliating with a vengeance against those who would dare to investigate their misdeeds, like the shooting in Tucson of the bug spraying guy. I think his name was Schaefer, as I recall correctly. Whenever he was so scared he couldn't comply, they shot him to death, the officer with a rifle, high-powered, and the guy had no arm on him whatsoever. All he was there as a contract exterminator bug sprayer with a bug spraying wand that somebody supposedly mistook as a gun. So I find this to be very, very dangerous here in America, because this joint terrorism task force, this relates to the fusion centers, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the NSA, the CIA. All these agents in a vast intel network are posed against the American people. And I can tell you, I've learned, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who were wrongly placed on the terror watch list under the Obama administration, who are America-loving patriots, veterans, former law enforcement officers like myself who might be adept with home defense implements. And to have my former bride turned against me and become an undercover agent and suborn to commit felony perjury against me, to red flag me, to take my home defense implements away from me. In fact, I'm working on getting those things back, because I was exonerated from the false charges of resisting an officer with a weapon. Of course, resisting is a void and vague, under the doctrine of void for vague's word term, because it is whatever the officer wants to claim it is resisting, when you might be just defending your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights, the Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and other rights that we have, where we have a duty to authorize that, as stated in U.S. versus Meeker.
All right. Well, it sounds to me like, you've got a good grasp on the situation, and I wish you a lot of luck, and hopefully this information has been of help to Cody. And we're going to let you go here. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates. Michael. Okay, real quick.
Adventuresome attorneys out there in First Amendment, ACLU, or other experiences in this type of case. I have a slam dunk case because I was vindicated. That case was dismissed against me. I was unlawfully arrested, unlawfully incarcerated. I'm an ADA senior, so there is a large reward for anybody venturesome enough to come forward to defend American law and natural rights. So thank you so very much, Michael, for your aid and your help in exposing this treachery and treason against the American people.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And we're going to go back to the phones to Kelly in Canada. Aloha, Kelly. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, we love you Americans. I hope you don't mind us calling you Americans. Holy.
I don't have a problem with that.
We love you guys.
I don't have a problem with that.
Kind of, sort of. Oh, you don't? You don't like us? Nope. Just kidding. Why not? Hang on. Oops. Boy, it's just something wrong. Yikes. Okay.
Okay, Kelly, are we having some kind of technical issues?
We love, you know what, may I please say something, Michael?
Yes.
I almost married an American, and he said, Kelly, I love you very much, but you can't make me go to Canada. I said, why not? He says, because you guys hate us up there.
Well, that was certainly not my experience. I mean, when Claire and I lived...
hate them, But
when we lived in Washington State, we used to drive up to Vancouver Island all the time. We used to go to the Anthropology Museum there. And we went out on a cruise one time to look at the minke whales. And frankly, we found everybody, to be very friendly and not at all unlike what we're finding here in Indiana, where everybody's just friendly and they get along and they help each other out. And I don't know where this idea where Canadians hate Americans comes from, because it's not my experience.
No, I never lived it before until I lived here. You gotta live somewhere in order to... Indiana. May I please say something about Indiana?
Please do.
Dan Underwood.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Dan Underwood. Everybody said, what are you doing moving to Indiana?
Yeah, we get that a lot, but, we just couldn't afford
I said, oh, don't worry, Dan.
No, we couldn't afford to live in Hawaii any longer, and we have family around here. So, bunches of nieces and nephews.
Have I been bothered? No, I'm not bothering you. My friend, Suzanne. Okay, good. Anyway, she said, Kelly, you want to know what's really going on in the world? Go on that channel.
Well, thank you for the very flattering words here. We're going to have to let you go. We're starting to run out of time, and I got other callers waiting on the line here. So let's switch over to Brian in Canada. Aloha, Brian. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Nice to see you down in Indiana. How do you like the cold weather there?
I don't. To be very brutally honest about it, I don't.
Well, I'll be brutally honest. You've got to come up here into central Canada where I am. The outside temperature right now is about a minus 25 degrees Celsius, which is about minus 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And, of course, with wind chills, we're in the minus 40 range out here, old buddy. It is cold.
Let's see. I think we're at 33 degrees Fahrenheit right about now. I mean, there used to be a thermometer mounted to a bracket outside this window, and I got to get that replaced. But according to my iWatch, it's 37 degrees.
Wow, you're in warm weather compared to us. Hey, listen, what I called about, of course, is hell is frozen over today, Mike, because Greta Thunberg was just made Person of the Year by Time magazine. And you and I both agree that beside the fact that the global warming, a.k.a. climate change, a.k.a. climate anxiety, or whatever the criminals want to call it today, is such a massive fraud and swindle. And then somebody sent me some information recently that that little person in charge of, or the spokesperson now for the entire fraud, has made in the tune of $146 million from the fraud.
Wow, I'm on the wrong side of this argument. Well, my understanding is that Time magazine was originally going to name the whistleblower that started this whole Trump-Russia thing, but then they were reminded that this whistleblower is anonymous. They can't show his face. They can't reveal his name. And so they sort of, grabbed the transmission and shoved the handle over the other side, and Greta Thunberg got it.
Yeah, which to me is a travesty, and you probably feel the same way. It is such a joke. Because honestly, you and I both know that we are entering a grand solar minimum, that basically it is going to be cold for the next decade and a half, and it's going to get colder. And yet here we have her, and she recently went to that climate change conference in Spain, and I'm really shocked that nobody went up there when she was there and actually challenged her and her handlers to come up with the hard evidence to show that the planet is overheating. All we have is her saying, is her going the usual rhetoric of "How dare you?" and all you world leaders are removing my future, and Mike, you and I both know it is such a travesty, and people have swallowed this, and it just shows how human nature, like people are so gullible, like they will.
Yes.
The fear mongering has just driven people now to hysteria. You have young children these days in school panicking and screaming that, oh my God, we have to do something to save the world. We're all you adults all hate us, and you're taking away our futures. But the bottom line is, I just wanted your personal opinion, of course, on this, because I know you are very high on this subject, and so am I. And that basically today, with Time insulting the world with this announcement, it is such a diabolical travesty, old buddy, and I am so disgusted.
Well, basically, you've hit it right on the head. The latest tactic is to use small children to push an agenda, especially children who are dealing with some kind of a disability, so that if you dare stand up and say, I think you're wrong, then Greta's handlers are going to stand up and say, how dare you? Can't you see this woman is suffering from whatever it is she's suffering from? How dare you challenge her? And that's what it is. It's just a dirty trick to get us to go along.
Yeah. Basically, what Greta suffers from, at least they claim, is that she suffers from a form of autism almost, and she's basically mildly autistic. So they're basically trying to use that. You are absolutely right. They're trying to use that as a cover, and they're basically therefore trying to shut down anybody that challenges them. And people need to challenge them because again, I'm freezing up here. It's getting colder. The mid states, United States, south of me here, are all in a deep freeze, and it is not going to improve. And so people should be saying, excuse me, where's this global warming?
Well, if you remember the story I ran just a little while ago about, 7 counties in New York are under snow emergencies right now. They've just been buried.
Mm-hmm. You are so right. But listen, I'll let you go because you have a lot of callers coming in. I just wanted your own 2 cents, and I appreciate your opinion on this matter, as usual. So you have a good day, old buddy, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Marina in Canada. And Marina, I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. So when you hear the music, don't hang up. We're going to put you on hold, and we're going to bring you right back and hear what it is that you have to say, because we're genuinely curious. Okay, there's the music. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Marina in Canada. Aloha, Marina. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Can I change the subject a bit?
Sure.
Okay. Do you know what RRSPs are in Canada? The Registered Retirement Savings Plan. It's something that you contribute to throughout, if you choose to, throughout your working career, which I did.
Sort of like a 401k here in the U.S.
Kind of, yeah. And then, so this is all now tied up in stocks. We know, I believe, I don't know anything, but I believe that it's all manipulated and that the crash may well be coming.
Yes.
Which means that I'm going to lose like some massive amount of money. They will not allow me to take it out until I'm 65. That is going to be a part of my pension. And if I take a hit again, like I took it in 2008, where I lost like 40 grand.
Okay.
Like, where can I put it? Where can I put this money where it'll be safer than stocks?
Well, that's a very, very difficult question to answer. It all depends on the money manager you have keeping an eye on your stock portfolio. Although our recommendation for our listeners here in the United States is to basically pull as much out of the bank as you can and just have it hidden on your property. because that way...
I cannot take out any money until I'm 65, and then I'm dealing with some massive taxes. You just had a caller from Canada, also Al from Canada. I find him super knowledgeable as well. Perhaps if anyone's listening, they can give me some ideas as to what they might have done. I am in no position to pretty much be shorting my pension by, like some massive amount, because I won't be able to make it, pretty much.
Okay.
So I'm looking I have an appointment on Monday at the bank with financial advisor. I trust them as far as I can throw them, which isn't very far. So I'm going to play nice there when I go to the bank, and I'm going to pretend to be all clueless and all that, but I'm not actually. Any information that I can get from possibly callers from Canada would be greatly appreciated.
All right. Well, we've got about a half hour. We've got about a half hour left in today's program, and with any luck, some people are going to be able to call on in and share some advice with you.
Am I allowed to put it in BRICS countries, which I think are a safer bet than American stock and our stock?
Yes.
Will they let me? I don't know. So that was one question. And just another question that I have. Do we know what's happening with Art from Off the Grid? Where is he? Like,
I have not heard from him in a while.
He used to call every day what's happening?
My guess is he's buried under snow by now.
Oh, no, it's been like 6 months since he called, and I'm just wondering if he got himself in some trouble or something.
Well, until he calls in again and tells us, we don't really know.
Is there any way that I can speak to a frequent caller that you have, such as Al from Canada?
No, we don't keep track of caller contact information. Once they hang up, they're gone, and that's for their protection. It's for your protection.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
But if I left my number for Al to call, would you do that?
Well, I'll tell you what. You need to talk to Mike, who's running the control board. And as soon as you're done with the phone call to me, talk to him and see if he'll take the phone number and pass it on.
Okay. And as far as your callers go, I think that majority, 75% of your callers are so well informed. Dustin, Al, Peter in Los Angeles. I'm really, really looking forward to what they have to say, as well as what you have to say, obviously. So, yes, I thank you very much for your time, and I hope I get some sort of idea as to what I can do before Monday at 3 p.m.
Well, we've already got a caller on the line. Okay, now Mike is going to take your number in case Al will call her, and we've already got another caller on the line who wants to talk about retirement. Okay, so we're going to take a bit of a break here for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, Marina, and we'll be back with the phone call with Chance after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Chance in West Virginia. Aloha, Chance. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. This is in response to Marina's call. I believe she was from Canada. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. She might want to look into, I'm checking into this myself, and I'm doing it the hard way without a computer. She might consider rolling over her money into a silver or a gold IRA account, if it's possible up there. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I've heard about that, and I don't know that it's possible in Canada. I know that it's certainly possible here in the U.S.
Well, it's just a recommendation that maybe she should check into it and see if she's able to do that. It might be a viable option for her. I hope she's listening.
I agree. All right, let's switch over to Ken in Michigan. Aloha, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. And to add on to Chance, in response to Marina, there's a guy on RBN every Tuesday and Thursday. His name is Jeff Bennett. He runs Morgana Precious Metals, also known as Kettle Marine. I believe there's a link on RBN's website directly to his website, and he deals with gold and silver IRAs. So if anybody would know, that would be the guy I would want to talk to. Plus, whatever business you do with him helps the network.
Okay, so you're talking about Jeffrey Bennett, and I certainly hope that Marina up in Canada is still listening to the show here, because that's good information. So was Chance's comments about retirement as well. It's a complicated issue because basically the banks are still looking for some way they can cheat you out of those last few pennies in your pocket. Is really what it comes down to. So.
Oh, absolutely. That's all I had. I was just going to mention Jeffrey Bennett, and hopefully Marina gives him a call because he's helped me out, and I recommend him highly.
Well, that's always good to have somebody that you have some confidence in, because, again, I really think it is time for people to seriously start diversifying into silver and gold and get out of the stock market. It can't go on like this for much longer. We know that there is a debt bubble spanning the entire globe. And what you need to do is get your hands on some kind of a currency or other kind of specie where it's under your control, and nobody can come knocking on your door and saying, you have to turn this over to the U.S. government. Although Roosevelt did that back in the 1930s. But, you know, if you bury it enough, it's going to be kind of hard to find, even with a metal detector. Okay, back to the phones. Frank in Canada. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hello, Mike. I'm responding to the lady who was calling from Canada regarding the pension plan that she's got there. And she was talking about a retirement savings plan, RSP, and I have that too. And 9 years ago, I decided to go out of it. And the way of doing it is to change it over to a retirement income fund. And with that, one is automatically obliged to take money out, a certain amount of money every year, on which you pay taxes. The previously mentioned RSPs, they are deferred taxes, and that makes the saving easier. So government eventually wants to have the money back. I think, if I recall it right, one has to switch over to RIF funds, registered income funds, the latest when one is 70. I did it earlier. And we now have a tax-free savings account that is granted to us. And I believe $4,500 each year can be invested in that every year. And then you don't pay any then you don't pay any taxes on the interest, because you already paid taxes before you put that money into the tax-free savings account. And that's what I did. So that money will always be available to me without having to pay extra taxes on it, and it builds up over time. And the government only obliges you to take out a certain percentage every year because you want it to last for decades. But they increase the percentage every year. So if she takes it, moves it all over to the retirement income fund right now, anything that she takes out, say she's got term deposits like I do, then the term can automatically be broken without any penalty once you're in that retirement income fund. And ultimately, I don't see any other way of saving your money. If the market crashes, everybody will be affected, and there will be no out. Money won't be worth anything anyway. But once she has it in a tax-free savings account, she can do with it whatever she wants. Put it under the mattress if need to be.
Yes.
And so that is what I can tell you.
Well, we just got an email here from somebody saying, just to mention that those who own RRSPs can in fact cash them in. The huge disadvantage is that they are then obliged to pay the taxes on them that were avoided during the year, whichever year in which an RRSP was purchased, and it must automatically be paid. Still, sometimes it's better to swallow and take the loss, which sounds like it may be huge, than to risk losing it all. And I think that's probably a very good approach to the problem, is, find a way to conserve your wealth. If you're going to have to pay a bunch of taxes, you're going to have to pay a bunch of taxes, okay? But you want to come out of the situation in a way where if the economy falls apart, either in Canada or the United States, that your little nest egg is left intact.
Yeah, that's to my knowledge too. The problem is when you take everything out, you will be put into a higher tax bracket. Suppose you have $200,000 sitting there and you take it all out at once. You get to move into the highest tax bracket, which may be like 50% right now. And so you would have to be prepared to kiss that goodbye. If you take only out, say, $10,000 a year, as the government might want you to do right now, then you are automatically in a lower tax bracket, and you will not lose as much. After all, it's meant to be a nest egg for the long time to come in order to support your pension income.
Well, I think at this
if
point,
you take it all out, that's of course
the best advice we can hang on out there is you got to talk to a professional. Okay, I'm not a financial expert. You can look at my savings account to see the truth of that. And I think people like Marina and these other individuals, they need to find somebody who's an expert at retirement planning in Canada and make sure that it's being done right. Now, got another email here. RRSP is a type of account which can deploy the capital into any usual investment opportunity. A GIC is a guaranteed investment certificate with no loss of base investment and a set return amount after a period of time. So it's all very complicated, and I can imagine probably a lot of elderly people get very confused by all this, and that may be part of the goal, is to get them so dizzy that they may start making mistakes that cost them money.
Yeah, and like I said, I have mine in term deposits. Those are GICs, Guaranteed Income Funds, certificates. And I used to have a financial advisor, and I don't have a very good experience with that. Okay. I did not make the forecasted increase, even if I kept it at a moderate value and annual amount, and I ended up losing, went into the negative, and that's not the purpose of saving. As an individual who wants to save for retirement, you are in no position to gamble your money away. So once I went into guaranteed income certificates, the term deposits, I was on target with my portfolio, and the only purpose for saving and making interest is anyway just to compensate for the inflation. we don't invest as the little people, we don't invest in order to make a fortune. We invest so that we don't lose what we had and worked for. So when we make $1,000 today and it purchases us a certain amount of things, we would like to see that we can purchase the same amount for the money that we have maybe 20 years down the road with the increase that we had through percentage. And that's the only purpose of a retirement plan anyway. Nobody should have the notion of falling into the trap and the idea to get riches like we are always told with interest and compound interest that we would eventually become a millionaire, etc. That's not the purpose of a retirement savings plan. The purpose is so that we can use the money that we earn today later on and buy the same stuff for it, the same amount as we would today. That's the only purpose. But if everything breaks down, I don't see any solution. Even with the gold, if the government outrules gold, and or if people go into bartering, you can barter for a loaf of bread with a watch, with maybe former silver coins. Maybe you give 20 silver coins, or you give a bullion of gold. Nobody will be able to change it. Nobody's going to cut it up with pliers or whatsoever. Once you need the bread, and you want it right now, and then you give whatever you have, and they take whatever they can take.
Yes.
So these are my 2 cents. I would not, as a low-income person, I would not go into stocks. And if you are mutual funds, you're paying the fund manager. And even if you did not have any increase over the year, the fund manager always takes its cut, and the financial advisor gets part of that, and they have no interest of you moving out of any funds because then they don't get cut anymore. So even if you don't have any gain, you will have even less because the fund manager and whoever else is on that bread line will feed off you. It's all very negative what I say, but these are my experiences. But since I went into guaranteed income funds, there was no looking back. Then I really made progress. Then my budget worked, my budget planning,
Yes. All right. Well, listen,
so I hope
Frank,
that helps.
I'm sure it does, and I'm sure Marina was listening here. And we're going to let you go here and switch over to David in South Carolina. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I hope you guys are adjusting well to the very different climate. I've been to both places. It's quite a shock, I'm sure. But I was going to respond to, let's move along from the retirement accounts, the Canadians, and all that, because in the first place, my mother, she worked for Prudential for years and years, and, the 401k, they're basically taking your money and gambling with it, so that's okay, whatever. It's just digits on the computer anyway, but the only inherent value in the world is land, and these people who, are super wealthy oligarchs, that's what they do. They purchase land because that's where gold and silver and all these things come from in the first place. Anyway, I had a friend who explained to me one time we're talking about gold and silver and stuff, and I said, well, you know what, my lead, it's like rock, paper, scissors, kind of overrides your gold because I can take your gold with my, lead. But I'll move along from there. But by the way, I do greatly appreciate your show. I very much love it. But I have friends in the Balkans and Germany, different places, but they see Americans were, bombing everyone around the world and stuff like that. And there's protests. Yeah, there are protests breaking out everywhere, engineered or not, we don't know. However, I have so many people who are thinking themselves, they're telling me this, they're really angry that Americans not necessarily as much, well, of course, about the mass murders, but the fact that Americans own more firearms personally than every army in the world combined almost. Personal firearms, their Second Amendment right.
That's a little reassuring, I think.
I mean, but yeah, I had a friend who I was telling that. I said, well, this is 1917 all over again. It does seem to be that way. The radical left is, of course, anyone who's radical left gets the most press coverage because, like I said, my friends in Germany, they don't go for that Christmas banning crap. They're the same like this other guy said.
Yeah.
But, they just get the most press coverage. That's the only thing.
Listen, David, we're going to have to let you go. We're almost out of time on today's show here. We got to take one more break for commercials, then the last segment of today's show, and we'll be out of here. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.